Paddington 2 is a follow-up to the charming 2015 live-action film based on a series of British children's stories about a talking bear who wears a red hat, a blue coat, and loves marmalade. This time around, having settled in with the Browns in London, Paddington wants to get a birthday present for his Aunt Lucy, and he finds the perfect gift in a pop-up book that contains a bunch of attractions of London, and he figures if he can't bring Lucy to London, he can bring London to Lucy. So he gets a job as a window cleaner to start saving up money to buy the book. But before he gets a chance, Hugh Grant, who plays an eccentric actor in the film, steals it and inadvertently frames Paddington for it. So Paddington is sent to jail, and it's up to the Browns and a few befriended convicts to get him out, clear his name, and discover the identity of the real thief. Full disclosure, I had no interest in seeing the first film, and I had little interest in seeing the second one, until I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score. When I saw that it had a 100% fresh rating with an average score of 8.6 out of 10, I was intrigued. That's the same score as La La Land, and that film doesn't have a 100% fresh rating. I had to see it. And then I found out that Netflix was showing the first Paddington. So I decided to watch that one first, and then I could go see the second one. I enjoyed the first Paddington. I thought it was a good movie. Not great, though. The second one is amazing. I have fallen in love with this movie and this character. Paddington takes place in its own weird fantasy world where things that don't normally make sense in our world totally make sense in that world. Talking bear doesn't turn a head. In the first one, they had a single moment where it's like, oh, yeah, whatever. And then it's totally forgotten. In this film, when Paddington goes to jail, he feeds a marmalade sandwich to the cafeteria cook, and all of a sudden he wants to feed that to everyone. And when everyone tries it, all of a sudden they're all inspired to try their own culinary creations. And that's what they do, and before long they turn the friggin' prison cafeteria into a fancy dining restaurant with a menu and waiters, and they make floral patterns and put them on the railings in front of the prison cells. And it's things like that. They're so insane, but at the same time, it's keeping in tone with the idea of the movie, which is to bring, light and happiness and friendship into this dark, gritty, mean world of ours. And this movie does have its dark and serious moments. The first one did, of course, but this film really kicks it up a notch, and it really pulls at your heartstrings. So much so that by the end of the film, I was crying. It was just such a touching film. All the characters are great. The Brown family, I'm going to be honest, in the first film, I had a bit of a problem with each of them. Except for Julie Walters' character. I had no problems with her. But with everyone else, and maybe it was just me, but it seemed like they didn't really know what they were doing with them, what they wanted them to be. There was an air of uncertainty with each of them. And again, maybe it was just me, but whatever it was between the first one and the second one, it got fixed, and I did not have that same problem with any of the characters. I thought they all did a great job. Sally Hawkins, Hugh Bonneville, the kids, everyone. I thought they all did a great job, and the characters were all really likable. Paddington befriends a number of prisoners in prison. Chief among them, the cafeteria cook, Knuckles, who's played by Brendan Gleeson. And I love Brendan Gleeson. He was my favorite character in Gangs of New York, and I think he's just a terrific character actor, and I think he did a terrific job in this as well. Hugh Grant, he plays the villain. He plays this eccentric, somewhat flamboyant actor who is, dare I say, certifiably insane. At multiple parts during the movie, he's having this back and forth where he's talking to his mannequins, and then he talks for them, talking back to him. It's so bizarre. And I'm going to say, normally this is not the type of character that I'm that fond of, but again, something about this movie, I just really enjoyed his character. I really enjoyed Hugh Grant's performance. I think it's a testimony to the kind of effect that Paddington has on, everyone else in the movie. Speaking of which, Paddington is such a lovable person. He's always polite, always optimistic, and honest. He's not naive or gullible, but he is somewhat ignorant because he's still trying to figure out human behavior. So he does manage to get into bad situations, but he never gets upset. Instead, he tries to turn around the situation and find a way to brighten it up. He's always trying to find the good in people and find some way to make them feel good about themselves. The worst he ever gets is when he gives people a hard stare. For people who forget their manners. And he has this magnetism to him where everyone he comes in contact with, he brightens up their lives. Mostly. He did it with the Brown family, he's done it with the neighborhood folk, and now he's doing it with these incarcerated prisoners who really don't have much to be happy about, but he finds something. And that's the effect this movie has. It really makes you feel good about yourself. If I'm being honest, there is one thing about the film I didn't like, and that's Mr. Curry. Peter Capaldi's character. And it's because his character's purpose is to act as the opposite to Paddington's ideals. Rather than seeing the good in people, he always sees the bad. Rather than seeing the upside of life, he always sees the downside. Instead of being polite and always complimenting people, he's always berating them. And in the first film, there was a bit of a character arc. But in this film, it was a straight-up plot device. Nothing really came of it. But that's my only real complaint with the movie. Overall, Paddington 2 is just a charming delight. Overall score is a 9.5 out of 10. I do intend to go see this movie again. This weekend there are 2 new releases, 12 Strong and Den of Thieves. And if you were planning to go see either of those and you haven't seen Paddington 2 yet, I would strongly recommend you go see Paddington 2 instead. And with that, I will leave you with some words of wisdom from the little bear himself. If we're kind and polite, the world will be right.